Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Glenn Alpert. I'm here to give the third presentation in a series of 8 lectures on entrepreneurship. This is run through the Entrepreneur Development Program, EDP, at the Johns Hopkins University Innovation Factory. Our third segment is going to discuss strategic management. This presentation and the ones preceding and after this are based on my own experiences as an entrepreneur while having spent a few years in business school and trying to take my own company off the ground and commercialize some very innovative ideas. So what I want to share with you today is my take on managing your whole entrepreneurial process from a higher level perspective, besides just worrying about the day-to-day activities that you're going to be working on as an entrepreneur. So if you review our last 2 presentations, our first presentation related to just the basis of getting started, and our second presentation related to your framework of going through your theoretical phase, which are your ideas, to commercializing your product or service, to the production or delivery of that service. So what we're going to look at now is the overview, in other words, how you strategically manage that process moving through the phases. So really what you need now is a framework. What I would recommend is, in order to keep track of all this information, if you're using a laptop or you're using your computer, create a few folders for yourself where you're storing all of your information. So you should have a folder that has to do with your theoretical, which are your ideas, your commercialization process, your delivery, and then also, as we're going to discuss today, the strategic management, the thinking process behind it. So by now, if you reviewed our first 2 presentations, you should be ready where you're ready to write your first version of your business plan. So now we'll talk about your business plan skeleton, as I call it. What the business plan skeleton is, it's not a full business plan that's going to take you a lot of time and effort. But it's just, as I said, it's just the skeleton. It's just the basis of what you can build things on top of. Chances are your business plan is going to change every month or 2, or even every few weeks, especially at the beginning. At the beginning, it's going to change even more often. So you don't want to write a full-length business plan with a lot of detail that you're going to end up changing very frequently. So the idea of the business plan skeleton is to get yourself organized, to get everything out of your head on paper. If you have already constructed your slide decks, your website, a brochure that I discussed in the previous lecture, anything that's remaining in your head, your long-term strategy, the story of how you started, maybe potential customer segments, that may not have been discussed in any of your previous presentations. At some point, which is now, you need to get that out of your head and onto paper. The business plan skeleton, as I call it, is going to be a living document, meaning you're going to be changing it. It should be changed. That's the point. It should be something that you can modify relatively quickly and update on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to have every... If you talk to people about a business plan and ask, what should I include in my business plan? If you go to the Small Business Administration website, or you talk to someone who helps banks lend money to newer companies, they're all going to look for different things. But just do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be the best you can do for the moment. Also, one of the important reasons to have a business plan, or at least a business plan skeleton, is that at some point, as you start to talk to more people, you're going to be asked, do you have a business plan? And if you say no, it just gives people the impression that you don't have the credibility and you haven't done the diligence it takes to actually write one. You may have everything else up to that point, but having a business plan in hand gets you to the next step in those conversations when you meet with people that really ask you this very direct question: do you have a business plan? If there are some areas, particularly the marketing and sales plan, which you may not fully understand until a little bit further into your process, it's okay to say that certain sections are under development, or that you're going to be working with a professional or a group of experts in certain areas. So that's okay too. But here's what I recommend including in your business plan skeleton. I'm not going to go over each of these individually. They should be self-evident here on the list. You can also view the slides on my SlideShare page as I've posted. The key thing is that you really want to get all your thoughts organized. anything that is in your head that you just have not told anybody, that is hard to explain, this is a great place to write it down. However, if there's anything that you consider highly proprietary, you can speak to it in your plan, but don't actually write it. This reduces the risk of something slipping out that you don't want other people to know. The business plan skeleton should be something that you are comfortable with someone reading it, if you trust them, and if they demonstrate that they can give you the right type of advice. It's something that you may have to show to people at another point. So this is just, these are some points that you'll want to write in your business plan skeleton. So now we're going to talk about strategic management, which is, these are just a few definitions. Strategic management is the continuous planning, monitoring, analysis, and assessment of everything that's necessary for a business to meet its needs. My short definition is that you're just looking at your business from the 50,000-foot view. You're taking a step back. You're making sure that everything's moving according to a schedule. That you're always moving forward. You're never moving backwards in your business. You're always planning for the next step. If you are not organized and you don't have a big picture plan for yourself, you may miss valuable opportunities. You may, during crucial or critical conversations with people, you may forget something. You may miss a point that might be key. And there are also a series of things you may need to keep track of in your business as you're developing. Here's our TCP cycle. TCP stands for Theoretical Commercialization Production. What we're focused on in strategic management is the zooming out of this whole process to make sure that this cycle is going according to plan. That we're able to start here in theoretical, we're able to move to commercialization. We may have to move back to theoretical to revalidate some ideas. We move through commercialization. By any means necessary, by hook or by crook, getting through commercialization into understanding how we can produce or deliver on some sort of a prototype or version 1 if you're going to build something. Or if it's something simple that it's not a technology platform or anything, it's something simple like a coffee shop, right? You need to make your first cup of coffee and somebody has to try it. Then we can get the customer or the client to assess it, and then we can actually start the cycle over again, but now we have a lot more momentum the second time around. So strategic management is really focused on understanding this cycle as a whole. So I recommend taking a management inventory before you start the process. Some of these could go into your business plan, but I think a management inventory gives you an idea of what's under the hood of your own business, which you really need to know. Even if you have a co-founder or multiple founders, somebody needs to have this in their head so they can speak to it when asked. So just a couple of items. Your legal documents, very important. Drafts of emails. I've found that occasionally when you get introduced to somebody that you want to connect with, you will send them an email or two about what you do. And that email often is the same email. It may change or it may update over time, but you want to save the drafts. You want to, first of all, you want to make sure that your emails, as someone told me, are perfect. Meaning, you want to make sure that the formatting, the font is correct. The problem is if you start copying and pasting emails into each other, sometimes it distorts the font size or some of the email communication you're writing. So you'll want to save some of these drafts in a Word document so you can reference them later. Any documents related to office space or any other facilities you're using, any meeting notes. Sometimes it may be a good idea to have a note taker during a meeting or someone volunteering to help you, because it's very hard to think and speak and also write and take notes at the same time. To take extensive notes, you can certainly write down points. Anything to do with the people that you're going to work with, people will send you, most likely will send you resumes. They'll send you people that they know that might want to intern for you or work with you as advisors or consultants. Any security protocol, Strategy presentations are important because you may have to reuse them over and over. Some people are more interested in, is your business even a good idea? And then others will assume that you know what you're doing as far as your idea, but they want to see where will you be in the next year? What are your objectives in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? They want to see some sort of a forward-thinking strategy, so it's good to have this too. Document your expenses. The point where you start making revenue, you need to open your books, so to speak. You need to start following your accounting practices. But beforehand, if all you have are some expenses out of pocket, you need to keep track of those. Your incorporation documents, that's when you registered your business. They're the documents that you receive in the mail, giving you your tax ID number and your employment identification number. They're things that you may need for official purposes. Your business plan is also included in your management inventory. Any competitive intelligence, meaning research you've done on competitors or possible competitors. Roadmap. On the previous presentation, we saw the step ladder where you're going from, at the beginning, you're going from just the idea phase all the way up to having a scalable and repeatable business. Anything to do with contractors, and certainly if you have an advisory board by now, any meetings, you want to record those notes and have them in some sort of an archive for yourself. So just a word on accounting. Me personally, my opinion is that until you really open the books, you don't need to worry too much about accounting. The only thing is that you want to record all of your business expenses. At the beginning, it can be difficult to separate your personal finances from the business, but the first thing you'll want to do out of many other things is open a business banking account, and I mentioned that in presentation number 2. But you open your business banking account, and when you're ready, hire an accountant or a part-time bookkeeper to work for you for a minimal amount per week, just to keep your financial records in order. Once you open your bank account, order a book of checks. It's not terribly expensive, but if you can, you want to just record everything you pay in some form of documentation. But having checks in the name of your business looks more professional. If you need any other advice, just find the right resources. Your banker will be able to help you with most things here. Also on legal. Accounting and legal are some of the big obstacles I think that entrepreneurs face. If they talk to people about their idea right in a very early stage, before they've even refined the idea yet or commercialized it, people that don't really have a lot of knowledge about the process start throwing legal and accounting questions at them. The problem with this is that you can't really worry about this until you need to. It's important to start thinking about it ahead of time, but if you start worrying about this too far in advance, you're not going to be focusing on your product, which you should be. You're going to be caught up in a lot of things that you may not know about. So if you happen to have an attorney or someone who's familiar with business law, as a friend, a family member, or just an acquaintance, it's just good to start. Their starting point is someone that you can just call up and ask for basic questions. They're not giving you formal legal advice, but it's good to have someone that you can just bounce something off as for ideas. When you have formed your operating agreement, which I've spoken about in the second presentation, as soon as you think you're getting close to recording your first revenue, you want to have someone with the legal background that is officially giving you legal advice to review the operating agreement. When you're ready, hire a professional, hire somebody that can give you professional advice and official legal advice on your questions and whatever it is that you need. A lot of attorneys will do an hour or so of free consultation, or a lot of incubators or small business association groups will give you basic advising complimentary. You want to make sure that before you sign any legal agreements with anybody, a supplier, a contractor, a customer, make sure that you know what the legal risks are to you, and make sure that any legal document has been fully looked at by your legal representative and, of course, their legal representative. If you need some form of business insurance, find that out as well. So now you're going to decide, are you going to use office space or not? There are a few points on this. There will be a point in your business where I'm going to assume that most people, when they start, are going to just be working from home. If you're affiliated with the university and you have some incubator or free space that you can just set up and work, that's fine too. Home also means that you're working from coffee shops. That's the road that many people start on. Or just any quiet public space. There's going to be a point though where you're going to need to consider an office space. It could be that you haven't made any revenue yet, you haven't opened your books, but you want to start having meetings. Maybe you're inviting your advisory board members, maybe you've networked, you met someone through networking and you want to have a professional meeting with them where you want to ask them some serious questions about your business and you want them to take you seriously, and so you're going to need a professional space to meet them in. So I'll mention incubators. Business incubators come in a lot of different flavors, a lot of different shapes and sizes. Some incubators require you to apply to them first, and then the decision about whether or not you're allowed into the incubator is there's an investment process too. So they will decide, are we going to invest in your company? If yes, if we will, then you can join the incubator with other companies that we're investing in. Other incubators, it's just about the office space. Other incubators have certain criteria, like they want to see that you've already received funding, you've already received the first customer, or you've already hit a certain amount of revenue per year. You have to find the type of incubator that has the cultural fit, it has the right type of network that you want to be to surround yourself with. Part of what incubators are supposed to do is provide you with access to mentors, advisors, or resources. Usually you can set like office hours with some of the mentors or the advisors. They're not going to be there every day, but people that really are relevant to your business and that can help you to solve issues that you may not understand yourself. If you're not fully up and running yet, or it's just still too early, save your money, just work from home or work from, just find a quiet space to work, maybe a university library, or if you want, just start it, coffee shop or bookstore. It's been done before. But you really have to ask yourself if you're ready for the office or not. I'll tell you from my own experience, having the office space does definitely add an element of professionalism, and it lets people know that one question that you may receive early on is, out of the blue, I called it the question gauntlet in one of the previous presentations, but one of the questions you may get thrown at you right away is, oh, where's your office space? And if you say, oh, I'm working from home, I'm working from a coffee shop, the best answer is just say, oh, I'm working remotely, because, well, that could be anywhere, but just tell people you're working remotely instead of saying, I'm working in my living room. It just sounds a little better. So if you're working on your business part-time, you may be able to, and you're doing something else on the side, you may be able to work in that space. Just find somebody that's willing to let you have a space where you can work. The next piece that you'll want to build once you've completed your business plan skeleton is what I call your strategic vision deck. And this is a slide deck with a similar format to the other presentations we talked about in previous, in session number 2 and number 1. So you want a slide deck that you can continually update over time. So for example, your business plan is going to be updated periodically as the living document. Maybe every couple of months, maybe when a significant change happens in your business. The problem is you can't just put your business plan in front of somebody and expect that they're going to read the whole thing. It's too much mental information to digestion. You're going to want a slide presentation that you can update as needed. This is similar if you're watching this and you've worked for a large company. Every so often, usually every quarter or more frequently, the CEO of the company will present internally to the employees, and they're going to have updates on the strategic initiatives and progress that the company is making on different things. So this is really along the same lines, except that you're the one creating the presentation. So any changes or any short-term or long-term objectives that you're working towards, it's your vision. It's not your whole company described in the slide deck, but it's your vision of what are your next objectives, which milestones have you hit, what's your progress. And this is a presentation that you can show to people week to week. Anybody that is at the point where you're showing them information about the internal workings of your company. So here are the elements that go into your strategic vision deck. Your bottom line up front, your roadmap, where you are along the step ladder from your idea to your repeatable business and all the steps in between. Current progress, how far you are along that stair step. Also, it's good to include how you started, what your original idea was, and if at some point you had your pivot, meaning you went down a certain road to develop your idea, then you realized the opportunity actually wasn't exactly there, but by going through that process and walking down that road, you learned that the true opportunity to uncover was something else, and then you're ready to pivot and move towards that goal. Understanding the market opportunity, what's the potential size, what potential industries, or what potential customers can you access in order to sell your product or service? How large is it? How can you segment your customers? If you're going to if you're doing a business to business, are you going to sell to large corporations, medium, small? If you're doing a business to consumer oriented business, what's the demographic of individual consumers? How can you reach them? What are if they're distributors, say you're selling a new toy, what types of toy stores do you want to go into, the big Toys R Us type store or more boutiques? You'll also want to describe how you created your value proposition. Your value proposition, as I discussed in the previous slides, really has to be rock solid before you can move forward. Even when you present your value proposition to others, they don't always know the story behind how you created it. They may think that you just pulled it out of a hat, which of course we know is not true, but you'll want to include the step-by-step process about where it came from and how you created it. Otherwise, they don't have any way to know if your value proposition was just, as I said, pulled out of a hat. You'll want to include the names of a few people on your gold review team, mentioned in presentation number 2. Find 5 prominent people in that industry or that field or your niche that you spend time with that reviewed your product or service, and that you can point to say, this is what these people said about it, and this is what I did to improve, adjust, or refine my ideas. You can take this from your idea deck, which is presentation number 2. Why is it worth solving? Sounds like a simple question, but it's something a lot of people want to know. What is the solution to the problem? And of course, the value proposition. You also want to include your mission, vision, values, very important. What principles are going to guide you, your ethics and your business ethics and morals, and how you make your leadership decisions, on what basis. Something about your culture. You may not have hired any employees yet. It may just be you or a co-founder, but people want to know, what's your culture? It's one of the most important things of a company, because when people want to associate you for a business purpose, if you have a culture that is against what they believe in or against what they really want to be a part of, you can have a great product, you can have all these wonderful people around you, but then these people won't want to associate with you. It could be employees, it could be advisors, it could be other business organizations you want to develop partnerships with, or mentor-mentee relationships with. You'll want to talk about who you are as the founders, your advisory board members, where you are with your business today, and where you want to be in the future as far as people. Let's say that you haven't even hired anybody yet. You know, one of the first people you want to hire is, say, a programmer or a software developer, or someone who understands marketing and how to reach different customer segments. So you'll want to mention that in your future needs, just so you have it down. You also want to have some starting points for your business model and your go-to-market strategy. Developing a business model is a whole process unto itself, but you'll want to have some ideas about how to start it. One thing I recommend is look at some larger, really more established companies, or companies that started up in your industry where you're doing the same thing they are. Well, you're running a similar business, maybe the product is similar or the service is similar, but you want to see how they did it. So if you want to start, one thing that comes to mind is Beanie Babies. So if you want to start if you want to make toys for children, look at something like Beanie Babies to start off with. That was that craze and Furby, the Furby and Beanie Babies. There is actually a business model behind it. You don't really understand the business model when you look at the product, but you're looking at what was the method to get all the marketing hype. How are they able to expand so quickly? How did it become so popular? I don't think they did a lot of they did some advertising, but a lot of it was word of mouth. And so these are all things that you can build into your business model. Of course, if you're developing a technology platform, it's going to be a little bit more sophisticated than children's toys, but you'll want to look at other companies that you look up to that have done something innovative and figured out a business model that you can emulate. And of course, anything to do with looking at competitors and ideas or funding strategies. If you're going to need funding, what are some possible sources? Who are some possible contacts that can advise you in this area? So this is your roadmap, and this was discussed again in session number 2. We have your ideas all the way at the bottom, and at the top right, you have a predictable, repeatable business that is now making money, and you're in the black, you're not in the red. So the more time you spend, you can't take forever, but you've got to be extremely diligent here in order to refine your idea. Then you're moving to confirmation, which means somebody believes in it enough that they want to help you build your first prototype or your first version of it. This is when you actually build your first unit or your first technology or your first creation. Then you have people that start to purchase your first versions. You figure out maybe somewhere in here you start to figure out your business model, how you're going to repeat getting these customers. Now you're ready to scale up and go big. Now you can become profitable, and now you can become a more predictable business that people believe will be around for a very long time. The further you get along this continuum, the less risk is involved with your business because you cross more milestones, and the more value you're now bringing to the table. So if I'm an industry veteran, and you happen to meet me and you're still in your ideas. Let's say that you're in the hardware business, and I'm an industry vet. I've been around and seen everything. If I meet you here, I may give you a couple pointers and tell you, keep chugging away. But if you're here and I meet you, I'm going to take you very, very seriously. I'm going to treat you a little bit differently and give you different little nuggets of advice than if I met you when you were here. So this is a good way to organize in your strategic vision deck. This is a good way to organize some of your thoughts. How do you communicate all this information quickly and easily? So what I recommend is just create a continuum here where there's some things that you don't know, and that's okay. Uncertainty is just part of the game here. There's some things that you're very certain. There's some areas here that you know almost for sure because you've heard it from so many people and you've identified these elements yourself. So what you can do is you can move these boxes around. You can move, let's say that you're just in the very beginning, everything might be under here. Maybe it shifts a little bit. Maybe growth potential means that there's more for you to learn. You know that you're not starting from scratch, but you're not absolutely certain that you have the answers either. And every time you give your strategic vision deck presentation to anyone, you can adjust these and move them around as you need. So you'll also, under this, you'll also want to list what your immediate objectives are. What are you working on this week? What are you working on this month? What's your next milestone? Not the stair-step milestone, but what are the next very small check marks that you need to meet in order to move forward? And also, under the uncertainty, what are just some areas that you're stuck on or that you're not able to even work on right now? That's okay. You have to identify your unknown unknowns. That's important. So So this slide is just discussing where you are in your development. This is your current progress, and now your story. I would recommend it's easy for an entrepreneur, someone with an idea that's made some progress, to just spend a long time talking about themselves and how they reached this point. Everyone has a really interesting story. Unfortunately, not everybody else wants to hear the whole story. If you can reduce it to about 3 slides, then I think you can tell it effectively without distracting from the message, which is where you want to go with your company. So I recommend just the inspiration about how you got started, how you got basically your pivot, which is the first direction, if you did, the first direction you went in, and then the discovery process of realizing that that wasn't exactly what the market wanted, but that allowed you to discover a new area which you pivoted to, and now that's your focus. Some entrepreneurs and some early stage companies pivot multiple times. That may be the case. Also, what's your vision of where you're going in the future? The market opportunity. This again can be 1 slide. Which industries do you believe, or have you been told that your service is, if it's a business to business, is applicable for, or if it's a consumer product, which customer segments, what demographics, what type of customers, how large is the market that you're going to go after. If you have a niche, obviously, if you're selling kitchen appliances, that's a really large market. You have to segment that into niches, or maybe even into sub-niches, in order to really start to wrap your head around on how big the opportunity is. And of course, identifying what it is that you don't know, what are the questions that still remain and still linger. You may have to find an expert to answer some of those questions. So your value proposition. What is the process that you went through to create your value proposition? You'll have to just reiterate this so people understand that you didn't pull it out of a hat. List key people on the red team or gold team, as I mentioned earlier, that helped you to get to this point in your development. What were some pointers or key pieces of advice that you received from each one of those people? And why is the problem or the need, the market need that you're attacking here, why is it worth filling, or why is the problem worth solving? For some of your guiding principles, this is something that I never really thought about myself until I realized I needed this. You may pick up a book that has to do with leadership, or the purpose, something that's more philosophical. And if you read the book, maybe a person has written about business ethics, or leadership principles, or management principles. The key is, it's one of those intangible things that you can't put it in anyone's hand, but if people see that you're following a certain set of ethics and thought processes about how you're going to guide your company. It's no different than if you were a captain of a ship, and your ship is, if you're Columbus and you're setting sail into the unknown, no one knows whether you're going to come back or not. And in order for people to get on that ship and trust essentially their lives to you, they know that when there's a storm, when there's a problem, when the boat has a leak, when food and water starts to run low, that you're the ultimate decision maker, and they want to know that you have an ethical and a really strong framework for making decisions under crisis. And if you don't, or if you have a weak framework, they won't even want to get on the boat with you, let alone sail halfway around the world. So in entrepreneurship, hopefully no one's risking their lives, but people are risking their reputations, their time, their energy, their opportunity costs, that they could be doing something else. So people want to see that you've got some code that you're following. So what I recommend is find a leadership discipline or thought leader that you really get something out of, and read one of their books. And that way, when you talk to people, you can say, you know what? In addition to running this company, these are some of the principles that are outlined in this book by this thought leader are what we follow, and it's the framework. That instills more trust in people than if you just say, well, you know, we're good people, we're honest, we make sure we do everything right, we take care of everyone. This way, you really have something to follow that someone else who's spent maybe their whole lifetime thinking about has written down, and you can adhere to that. So try to find a couple of ethical codes that you like, pick one or two of them, and try to follow those. Well, follow them as closely as possible to guide you in your decision-making process. So again, these are some examples. Maybe you're from a family of small business owners or small business people, and like Marriott Hotels is a good example. It was started just with a root beer stand. A lot of very large hamburger or fast food chains just started with someone setting up a shop, but they make sure that they took care of the customer and put the customer first. Something like that. If you're in the military, you can use some values you got out of that. It could be in your particular religion, you have some ethical codes about doing business or being honorable, and so you can integrate some of these into your business as well. Your company culture. Make a list of what your company values, not just you, but everyone in your company, when they associate with you, should value a certain set of items. Make a list. Is it integrity? Is it delivering, doing what you say you do? Is it that your word is your bond, or is it that you always meet deadlines no matter what, or is that you always do the best job you can, even if you have to exceed a deadline? There's a balance. You have to decide what those guidelines are. The great part, the challenge, but also the good part is that you get to shape your own culture. But how you shape your culture will have a large determinant on how successful you are as time goes forward. In your people or team section of your strategic vision deck, you'll just want to have a one slide that just has maybe some headshots of your advisors and your founders, and then a one page for each one about have just your bio on there. Any key employees, if you have a management team or if it's just you need to indicate that. The skill sets or the type of people you'll want or need in the future. And your human capital is basically the expertise that you have access to. Some people may just be mentors for you. Some people may you can hire them as consultants on an hourly or part-time basis, and other people, there may be a slot for you to hire them full-time. But you'll want to take an inventory of what your needs are. So if we look at your business model, like I said, there are many types of business models, and you can spend quite a long time trying to figure out which one is best for you, or how you can customize and mix and match different business models to fit your idea, and how you bring, and also creating your go-to-market strategy also goes hand in hand with your business model. So, as I've said here earlier, how do you move through the TCP cycle in an organized way where you don't get off track? Your theoretical, commercialization, production, and when you've completed the cycle once, you've basically created and marketed, or you created and delivered your first product. Now you're ready for all kinds of feedback from everybody. You're ready to take a lot of criticism, a lot of wants and needs from your customers. Hopefully it's constructive criticism. But if you spend a lot of time validating your idea ahead of time, you'll have some positive feedback when you get to the end. Now you're ready for phase 2. You're going to repeat the process, but now you're going to come out with the next version. And so the cycle continues, and that's a business. A lot of the video games that come out, there's the PlayStation 1, and then the 2, and then 3, and 4, and now I think we're at 5. So this process is a period of years. If you're moving through this too quickly, chances are you might not be building a long-term sustainable business. And people will know based on the amount of diligence that you put into every step. So your go-to-market strategy. You don't have to have all the answers at this point, but you have to have some form of written documentation that you've at least thought about these. Any bullet point here you can find someone who's an expert on any one of these things and spend hours with them. But these are just some key things. They're all these elements are interrelated to each other, but they're all based. Your go-to-market strategy all comes back to your value proposition. What is the problem you're trying to solve, and how do you solve it, and what's your solution for it? Your go-to-market strategy is, how do you now get to the customer? You know that there's a need, you know that people are willing to pay for it, but how do I connect from me sitting in my office or sitting in my coffee shop? How do I connect to the customer to get into a buying scenario, a buying situation where somebody is going to now put down money for this product I'm offering? Or maybe how do I get them to the point that they're going to do it, they want a demo? So of course, you've got to consider who you're going to target, how you're going to segment your market, how you're going to measure your activities, and now we're getting to the point where I don't think that in every situation time is money, but when you're purely looking at marketing and sales, time is money, or it's the opportunity cost. You don't want to waste your time. How do you develop distribution channels or partnerships that can help you to go to market faster or more effectively? What's your sales cycle? How long will it take you to go from meeting the prospect or making a first connection to closing a sale? And you're not going to know that until you go through this process. Over here is key. If you're marketing to businesses, there's a step-by-step process that you're going to be going through. From the first step is them just hearing about you or knowing about you, all the way through a trial or demo, and then ultimately purchasing your item. Peripheral to the go-to-market strategy is the sales plan and the marketing plan. And I'll say that it's going to be, if you're the creator of the product or service yourself, it's going to be very difficult to build those wholly on your own, because you're going to need people with other types of expertise to help you build your sales plan and your marketing plan. Maybe people that have worked in other similar companies or similar industry, but you're going to have to find some other people to work with. And I've mentioned in previous slides people that can help you. SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, I'd also recommend if you need some assistance with some of these, because these are ubiquitous to most businesses. Competitive intelligence. This is basically, if you're going to enter a market and there's opportunity, chances are there's some form of competition. The greater your competitive advantage and the more unique your service is, maybe the less competition you'll have, but it's critical that you know even more about your competitors, the more unique your service is. If your service or product is not all that unique, there may be more competitors, and you don't have to know as much about them, but you need to do some form of research and some form of analysis so you know who you could potentially be competing with in the future. You'll want to do as much as you can without getting taken too far off track. You'll want to also document all the information that you found that was relevant and summarize it. Maybe you summarize it in a slide deck that has to do with competitive intelligence, or you write a short report on it. Make sure you understand how your value proposition is unique and different than the other competitors, the other companies, and what can you? I think the saying from Steve Jobs was that good artists copy, great artists steal. I don't think you should be stealing anything, but you could also be examining, and this is what competitive intelligence is of course, ethically, and being ethically correct, examining other companies' business models, other companies' go-to-market strategy from publicly available information, using that information to help you in order to construct your own plans. This is just part of business. That's why you don't want to publish your business plan and your strategic vision online for everybody. But there's a lot of information that you can get just by using the internet on putting your business model, your go-to-market strategy, and your strategies to deal with competitors together. So you'll also want to ask someone who's an expert in your product or your service or your industry what they think of you. So when someone asks you how you're different, you can point and say that an expert told you such and such information, not that you pulled the information out of a hat for yourself. One of the Gold Team members can help you with the competitive advantage. It's essential that you get this from someone who really has some expertise. Funding strategies. In your funding strategies segment, in your strategic vision slide deck, you'll want to speak to, are you going to pursue funding? Is it needed? Is it needed to build your first prototype or version 1 of your product or service? If you're still pre-revenue, meaning you haven't made any money yet, that's okay. Just note it. If you've been self-funding, you've been just paying out of pocket, or family and friends, or student loans, just for basic expenses, just write it down so people know where you're coming from and where you're starting. You also want to write at what milestone, at what point in your development are you going to start examining your funding sources where you could potentially get funding from. If you've identified potential funding sources, you'll just want to write it down so you have it for later. You could look at, I like the idea of the strategic investor, meaning somebody who's a business entity that's a larger company that has walked down the path you've walked on, where they have a product that is similar to yours out of many other products. If they have a VC, venture capital internal group, or they fund innovative companies, you may just want to partner up, and you want to express to them that you're not there to compete with them, you want to learn from them, and you want to develop a relationship with them. So it's up to you. There are many sources that you can look at for funding, but you just want to get it down on paper. So that wraps up today's presentation. Next week we're going to do session 4, and I believe session 4 is related to dealing with uncertainty. So we hope you've enjoyed today's session, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.